Hey everyone, it's time to talk some Chapter Approved 2021. Right after this, quick intro. Hey everyone, welcome back to Blood of Kittens YouTube page, and this is going to actually be, for once in a couple months, a long form video. And the reason why I'm doing long form this time, and I also want to get back into doing more long form instead of just shorts that are kind of TikTok-y, is because Nurgle's rot, plague, whatever you want to call it, is dissipating around the world where at least it matters to Games Workshop products and where we play them, which means we'll have much more to talk about as more people will be playing events, playing games, and just generally I think the community is going to, got kind of a little stagnated in the last couple months while we had the flurry of activity when the Nurgle's Rot first came. It's kind of dissipated now. We just kind of need to play games. We kind of want to get and take all our models we painted over this last year and actually put them on the table and play them. So I'm so excited, looking forward to that. And so on that note, let's talk about something that I am not very happy with. I should say disappointed. I can't say not happy, because getting angry at plastic toy games, if you're getting angry at plastic toy games, you have other issues and you need to go to therapy or find a different hobby that you can be more angry at. I don't know, maybe gambling, because at least when you lose money, you can have a legit reason why you're angry. But as it is, the disappointing thing I want to talk about is Chapter Approved 2021. Now, this is, of course, not advanced comics, it's 2020 and 2021. The leaks are out. Let's just assume they're right. At this point, they have to be right. I mean, people have done enough translating from Italian to French to German to English that I think we have a good idea of what's actually in there. And the most crazy, insane, stupid thing that Games Workshop did in that entire thing is the fact they didn't update the actual missions. They left them the same. So when you open up that book, you're going to be like, ooh, cool, let's go see what this priority target mission is going to be like now. Did they change the secondary in that? Nope, nothing's changed. Just nothing, because we don't want to take, a couple weeks out of a couple designers' times to actually go through some feedback, see what's not working and what's working, and change that. Instead, they specifically focused on the secondaries, and they did fix those, allegedly making them more balanced. Of course, we'll have to play games to find out if that is the case, but they did clean up some verbiage and that sort of thing. But honestly, you could have just had an FAQ of that, but instead you're going to charge us whatever this thing is going to be in US dollars, $30, $40, and you're going to charge us for that. And on top of that, they decided not to really change the points dramatically across the factions. It's always been a golden opportunity to kind of readjust the game, at least for the faction-wise, by readjusting the points. Instead, they just kind of nickel and dime little things here, just kind of like the last update they didn't have in January. They just kind of continue up the nickel and dime. And of course, they didn't update the big bugaboo of Drukhari or Admech, because when these books are printed chapter approved, they're done. They're done way in advance. So when we get these copies, it's like 2 codexes behind. And with all the supply chain issues Games Workshop was having, I'm not going to fault them for not just changing Drukhari points for the Raider and that sort of thing. Whatever. That's a thing you can affect with an FAQ. And by Jove, they did that already today. So if you're checking on your FAQs, you'll notice that they've changed some points for some models that are for some units that didn't make it into the cut with chapter approved. With that said, let's get back to chapter approved and continuing on this disappointment. Specifically, these missions. And not just so much that they didn't, fix the missions from a balance standpoint, like moving objectives where they are, changing the deployments, changing the verbiage. There was that rumor that all missions were going to require you at least to hold 2 objectives to get any primary points. I thought that change was going to be, didn't know if it was going to be good or bad, but it was going to be a change, something worth, changing your lists and that sort of thing, which would have made the game more dynamic and not as stagnated as it is right now. But more importantly, they didn't actually change the secondaries within the missions themselves, which means that the most unbalancing or just the most useless part of the chapter approved missions is not getting reworked. So now you'll still not take 75% of those internal mission secondaries. You'll be left with just taking if you're lucky enough to get a new codex, those mission secondaries or the mission book secondaries that are in the book, which they did update, thankfully. But we'll have to wait and see if that was actually dramatic enough changes. From looking at the changes, it doesn't seem that dramatic. So this is kind of a $40 paperweight that you're going to have to get unless you're going to get a pirated digital copy. But otherwise, if you want a physical copy, you're just going to have to get this thing that really should have been an FAQ or a re-release with this in here. I don't know. It's just bad all around for Games Workshop, and I don't get why they didn't do it, especially when they have the good old General's Handbook here that was the perfect, and I mean perfect, template for how you do a mid-year update to your game. The General's Handbook, if no one's familiar with it, Age of Sigmar is basically the same thing as Chapter Approved, but they change the missions completely. They do sweeping changes to the points of units. They don't really kind of half-ass it. They go all the way in, and it really changes up the game for better or for worse, but mostly for better, because for whatever reason, the playtesters in that group and how they look at the game and their feedback they get, they really make thoughtful changes to Age of Sigmar, and it really revitalizes the game, even though on the Codex end, Age of Sigmar has a lot more problems than Games Workshop, more problems than Warhammer 40k does, but at least the recalibration of the General Handbook does wonders for the stagnation that develops over an edition for any system. So that's why it makes it extra doubly disappointing for Chapter Approved, is that they didn't take that model. And it really goes to show Games Workshop's a very still siloed company. And what I mean by siloed is that the specialist team doesn't talk to the Sigmar team. The Sigmar team does not talk to the 40k team. They really kind of keep things separate. Like, in fact, the White Dwarf team doesn't talk to anyone except for when they get guest articles or guest editors come in and do stuff. But those are all siloed. And I've been to Warhammer World where I've seen these groups kind of in cliques doing their own cliquey things. And I think as a company, you want to, especially with something where systems are all kind of share certain rules, you can't have the upper management having these silos. You kind of have to mix these groups together to see what best practices, see what's working in each editions. And this isn't to say that there isn't any cross-talking. Of course, we've seen Sigmar influence 40k and 40k influence Sigmar. It's gone back and forth in the simplification of the rules. But for the most part, at this point, we kind of just have our separate groups, and they're not really telling each other what has been working well in their systems, even though they're taking kind of the overarching idea of like a General's Handbook, Chapter Approved are similar. But when you actually dig into them, they're not very similar in the sense of that they don't have the same amount of changes as each one would have in each edition or each different game. So that's my rant. It's a quick rant because I don't want to go on about it, but I'm disappointed, and I'm going to say it right here, and I'm going to say it right now after you hit the like and subscribe button and all that good stuff that you're supposed to do when I tell you to do it for the algorithm. And I think there's also a bell you're supposed to hit. But anyway, I'm just going to say it right now. If Games Workshop continues on this path, and if things kind of get more and more out of whack, I'm not saying it is. Drukhari, they've did their FAQ pretty quickly, but as more tournaments and more events happen, will there be a return from some certain groups deciding, hey, we're going to make our own mission pack with own rules? I don't know. It's possible. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of large egos out in the community that might want to say, hey, Games Workshop, we're doing this because you're not following through on what we feel like you promised to us. So I'm not saying we're going to see the return of ITC missions, because obviously that crew is out of that game. They're glad to let Games Workshop do this stuff. But maybe we'll get some, ETC might decide, hey, you know what, GW, we're going to make our own missions again because we're really not digging what you're putting out. And on that one note, too, I'm also kind of curious to see, especially with the Drukhari case where they were really overpowered. And this is what would be my final note, my final thing to say. And I could have even a whole 20 minutes about it. But anyway, point is, when are we going to get back to saying you can't play new codex until an FAQ comes out, or give a 2-week breathing period? I would really like to see events start doing that to make sure that we don't get these Johnny-come-latelys that just come and play the new codex right away and beat people to death, especially when they get advanced copies, or especially when they're on the playtesting team and they already have been playtesting a new army. They know exactly what's in it, and they go to a GT or a Major or an RTT and crush their opponents. Not because necessarily they are better. Usually they are better players, but most of the time they get even a greater advantage by being that they know the rules of something that they shouldn't know the rules that fast as your average plebe. So with that said, maybe we can go back to only playing codexes, new codexes, until their FAQs out. That also might put pressure on Games Workshop to actually release FAQs quickly and that sort of thing. But I'm not holding my breath on that, but that's something I'd hope would happen. That's my little suggestion to anyone that actually gets to the end of this video and sees this last part. But as it is, thank you for listening, guys. I'll be doing more long-term videos. I'll be bringing more battle reports because now we're open. Everything's kind of open. Everything's getting back to normal, so we can play games, do great stuff. So until then, talk to you guys later, and see you on the flip side. Bye.